as well as for DRAM. Then we had seen what is the data transfer rate. We had seen some of the physical characteristics with respect to semiconductor memory, magnetic disk, magnetic tape, and CD, which was compact disk. We had seen what is different memory hierarchy. We start with register, followed by cache, then your primary memory, which is main memory. Then we go to the secondary memory, which keeps on changing. So initially it was magnetic disk and magnetic tapes, which got replaced with CDs and DVDs, and now we have hard disk, pen drives, and other external storage medium. Then we had seen the diagram of 1-bit memory cell. So we give a input, and to that input we have a output. Now as soon as the input is being given, the select line gets activated, which is either set to the value 0 or value 1. If it is set to 0, the read write line or the read write line will never get selected, or it will not start functioning. But as soon as your select line is set to 1, your read write will activate, and it will perform either the read operation or write operation. And after the operation is being completed, your output will be given from that memory cell by using the output line. Then we had seen SRAM is a static RAM. Why it is considered to be static? Because we do not do any kind of refreshment. Whatever data is there, that data is remaining constant unless and until it is not changed by the user input or a user output. So we had seen there are total 6 transistors, out of which 4 transistors were cross coupled in order to get an effect of flip-flop. Why to get an effect of flip-flop? Because your SRAM stores the data in a flip-flop, which is a 1-bit memory cell. So either 0 or 1 will be stored. The remaining 2 transistors were used to get the address based on the address line. So now, depending upon the value of your C1 and C2, we were deciding which transistors were on and off. So at a time your C1 was high and C2 was low. At the other time your C1 was high and your C2 was low. Okay, so alternatively the value of C1 was set to high, low, and as well as your C2 was also set to high and low. Depending on these values, your transistors were getting selected and your SRAM was working. But you did not had anything like this in your DRAM. Why? Because in dynamic RAM, we do not make use of flip-flop. We store a data in a form of a charge. So since that charge leaks out, so to avoid that leaking, we have to continuously perform the refreshment cycle. Refreshment indicates that the value does not leak out and it remains as it is whenever it is asked by the user. But whenever that refreshment is done, we cannot perform any read or write operation. So we make use of capacitors, which is used to store the data in the form of a charge in your DRAM cell. Then today we'll be seeing what is ROM memory. So we have completed the RAM memory yesterday, primary memory, which can be either SRAM or DRAM. Since SRAM is much expensive, therefore you will many a times find DRAM installed in many of the system. DRAM is divided into many subtypes. You have DDR1, DDR2, DDR3, DDR4. That DDR is double data rate. So again, all these 4 types, that is DDR1, 2, 3, 4, they are the types of your DRAM cell. So if you go to buy a system and you may ask how much is the RAM or which is the RAM, the person may say that it is DDR3 with 124 MB or 128 MB, something like this. So what is that DDR? It is nothing but a type of a DRAM. So all the 4 types of DRAM have a same working procedure, is same like DRAM, but only the difference is the speed and the capacity of storing the data. Okay, the DDR4 is the latest. Before that, in many of the system, we have DDR3 also, but DDR1 and DDR2 are the lower configurations with terms of speed and the storage capacity. So today we'll be doing the next type of memory, which is the ROM memory. Okay, so it stands for read-only memory, and it is also considered to be as non-volatile. Non-volatile means it is permanent. It does not generally get changed. Okay, whereas your RAM, the primary memory which we did yesterday, was a volatile memory. Okay, now what does ROM stands for? ROM stands for read-only memory. So as the name suggests, it is a memory used only for purpose of reading. Okay, we cannot keep on changing and again read the data as and when it is required, like we can do it in your RAM. So a read-only memory is a type of storage medium that permanently stores the data on your computer or any other electronic devices. So it is not necessary ROM is a part of your computer system, but it is also part of many other electronic devices. But let it be any electronic device. In all the electronic device, it functions as a permanent storage for read-only purpose. Okay, it contains a programming which needs to start a PC and which is essential for boot up. Okay, why this ROM is required? Now you may ask a question that since it is a permanent memory and we are not allowed to write or make any changes, then why this memory is useful for the computer system? So this memory is useful in order to start your computer, because if you do not have a ROM, your computer will never start. Why? Because it performs a task of booting up. Okay, so the boot up procedure which your system requires initially, as soon as you press the power on button, that boot up procedure is stored inside your ROM, and therefore the ROM is essential part of your memory organization. It is not volatile, means it is a permanent kind of storage which is only for reading purpose and not for the writing purpose. Now how we had different types of RAM in our system, similarly we have different types of ROM also in a system. So let us see the first ROM, called as PROM, okay, which stands for programmable read only memory. So P stands for programmable, ROM remains same, that is read only memory. Now let us see what is this type of memory. PROM is a read-only memory, which is that can be modified only once by the user. That means, as it is said that the ROM cannot be changed, but if I make use of PROM, I'm allowed to change the data. But how many times I can modify the data? Only once. So who writes the contents in your ROM is the manufacturer. Okay, so if I have bought a ROM of some company, say IBM, so who is going to write the contents into your ROM? It will be the manufacturer of the company IBM. So that person writes the data into your ROM and insert it into the system, and then it is delivered to the shops and from where you buy. But if I take a PROM, or if my system is having PROM, though it is written once by the manufacturer, I being a user is allowed to program it, but how much time? Only once. That means I as a user is allowed to change the contents, but the contents changing allowed to me is only once at a time. Once if I have changed it, I cannot again and again rechange it. Okay. The user buys the blank PROM and enters the desired contents using a PROM program. So now to write the contents over here inside this PROM, what you require is a PROM program. By using this PROM program, you are allowed to change the contents inside the PROM. So what you have to do is you have to remove the existing ROM or PROM from the system. You have to go and buy a new PROM, use this program called as PROM program to insert a data inside it, and then install that PROM again inside the system. Okay, so what are you doing with this is, with whatever you have got with the system, you're replacing that with exactly a new PROM. Okay. Inside the PROM chip, there are small fuzzes which are burned open during the programming. So when I'm using this PROM program to write the changes or to write the contents or write the data in the PROM, how am I doing that? We have a small fuzzes when we open that ROM, and those fuzzes are burned when we do the programming. Small fuzzes means they may be a kind of an electronic device. Those devices are burnt in order to write a particular data inside the system. And who does that? It is done by the PROM programming concept. The user does not burn it on their own. Whenever the user uses that PROM program, automatically those fuzzes are burned, and that burning procedure means the data is getting written inside the ROM. It can be programmed only once and it is not erasable. So I have written the program once and I cannot again and again erase it and again rechange the contents. Once whatever I have written will stay permanently. Again, if you want to change, you have to replace that PROM, again go buy new PROM, write the data into it and install it again inside the system. So the cost is more if they are small in number. So cost is more if they are small in number, means if you go and buy multiple PROMs together, the cost is going to be increased. But if you buy only single PROM, it is not that expensive as compared to multiple PROMs, but it is faster as compared to your RAM memory. Okay, so writing of a data in your RAM is going to take much time as compared to writing of your data inside your PROM. Okay, is this PROM understood? What is programmable read-only memory?
Yes, ma'am.
What it has, it is a type of a permanent memory, but it still allows you to change the contents. How? It will first tell you to replace the ROM which is there in your system. You will replace that by purchasing the new one, write the data into it and reinstall it inside the system. Okay, and to write the data, what do you require is PROM programming. You cannot simply copy paste the data like how we can do inside the RAM memory. So that was all about PROM. Now next type of ROM is EPROM. What does that mean? Erasable programmable read-only memory. So that E stands for erasable and PROM remains as it is, that is programmable read-only memory. Now, what is this? It is a special type of memory that retains its contents unless and until it is exposed to ultraviolet light, UV light. To write to and to erase an EEPROM, you need a special device called as PROM programmer or PROM burner. Again, you have a same concept like in PROM. If you want to change your contents of a ROM, what you have to do, you have to go and buy a EEPROM. When you buy a EEPROM, you have to replace your current ROM from the system. But when you want to fill the data inside your newly purchased EEPROM, what you have to do is you have to make use of this PROM programmer, or you have to make use of PROM burner. By using these two things, you can insert the data inside the ROM. But what it is telling, if you want the memory, that if you want this memory or the contents to retain as it is, you have to expose it to the ultraviolet light. That means the concept used along with this PROM programmer and PROM burner to write the contents in your EEPROM is the ultraviolet light. That means if you have only PROM programmer and PROM burner, you will not be able to write inside the ROM. Along with that, you will also need a mechanism of a UV light. And once you have this mechanism, all the three, you can erase and replace the contents of your EEPROM. So which was this ultraviolet light exposure for the contents was not there in your PROM, which is there inside your EEPROM. Okay. So you'll require programmer or a burner, along with that a UV light concept, to put the data inside the ROM and then insert that ROM inside your computer system. So again, if you want to replace or erase any content, you have to remove the existing EEPROM, go and purchase again a new EEPROM, use the same concept, either a burner along with UV light or a programmer along with UV light, and then change the concept and insert that inside the computer system. Okay. Last we have is double EEPROM. What is double EEPROM? Electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So we have seen what is programmable read-only memory. We have seen erasable programmable read-only memory. Now we will be seeing electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. Okay, so this memory is programmed and erased electrically. Okay, so it requires some electrical concept for programming and erasing the data inside the ROM. It can be erased and reprogrammed about 10,000 times, which means what we were doing up till now in PROM and EEPROM, we were removing it, we were changing, we were putting it inside. Again, if I want to change it, I have to go and buy again a new PROM, again write the concept into it, replace it with the old one. So every time I was purchasing a new device, whereas here I will maintain only one ROM and I can erase it for about more than 10,000 times. Okay. By using what? By using some electrical concept. So this electrical concept, if I use, it is allowing me to keep the device same and change the data how much ever times I want. Both erasing and programming takes about 4 to 10 milliseconds. So how much time I'm going to take to do this erasing of a program and writing of the program? Only about 4 to 10 milliseconds. In EEPROM, any location can be selected and erased and can be reprogrammed. So if I want to erase a location or a data at a location, say suppose 200H, 2000 HP, if I want to replace some data, it is not necessary I have to start from the location 000H. I can directly go to the location 2000H, erase the data and replace it with the new data. So EEPROM can be erased only byte at a time rather than erasing the entire chip. So what did I do is, I went to a location 2000H, whatever bytes were there, I have replaced only those many bytes. I have not erased the entire chip which was happening in your PROM and EEPROM. I have to completely erase the chip, that is remove that chip, buy a new plain ROM chip and reinsert the data into it and then put it inside the computer system. Whereas here, even if I have multiple data into it and if I want to replace only single data, select the memory location, go to that memory location and erase only that much data at that particular location. No need to erase the entire contents of the ROM chip. Okay. Hence, the process of reprogramming is flexible, but it is slow. Why it is slow? Because erasing the entire memory or erasing the entire ROM is much more faster as compared to erasing a particular location. Why? Because first I have to go to the particular location, search for the data at that location, see to it that only that much data is getting erased. And if I'm erasing, it should not affect the other contents also. So this process becomes little slow as compared to erasing the entire chip which is there inside your system. So what is the difference in your PROM and PROM, EPROM and EEPROM is, if it is PROM and EPROM, I am replacing or I am deleting the entire chip and refilling the data again by purchasing a new chip. Whereas in double EPROM, what I am doing, I am keeping the chip as same. I am not erasing the entire chip. I erase only the contents whichever I want by going to a specific memory location. What is the other difference? The process of erasing and writing is much faster in your EROM and PROM, whereas it is little slower in your EEPROM. Okay, is this understood up till here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have seen the second part of your memory, which is ROM, read-only memory, and the three types of ROM: PROM, EPROM, and double EPROM. Okay, so what are the advantages of the ROM? It is a non-volatile in nature. That means it is a permanent type of memory. It can be changed only when it is required, and you have to follow certain concepts for changing those contents. You cannot simply copy paste or simply delete and paste the data and start using it like we have it in your RAM. It cannot be accidentally changed. It cannot be accidentally changed means, जैसे अपन by mistake I may delete a particular file which is there inside my RAM, but I cannot delete the file which is there in the ROM. That means I cannot work. Even if I want to delete a particular thing inside the ROM, I have to follow that concept of programmer or a concept of burner or a UV light to erase the contents and to write the concept. Or even if I try to accidentally delete it, it will not allow me to delete. It is cheaper as compared to your RAM. That means the cost of purchasing your ROM is much more cheaper as compared to your purchase of a RAM. It is easy to test. Why it is easy to test? Because I do not have to do anything. It is coming directly from the manufacturer, inserted inside the system. It is more reliable than the RAM. Why it is more reliable than the RAM? Because I know that whatever data I have stored inside it, nobody is allowed to temper that particular program. Even if you being an admin or you be a normal user, you cannot change the concept. Whereas if it is a RAM, anybody can easily tamper the contents which are there inside the RAM. It is static and do not require refreshing. So you do not have any such kind of refreshing concept, because I am using only one concept of burning those buses and writing the data into it. The contents are always known and can be verified. The contents are always known means whatever contents you have inside your ROM are basically the concept used for booting your computer system. So they are being known and they are being verified by the manufacturer from where you have bought a particular computer system. So you do not have to verify at a user level. They are already verified by the company. Okay, so these are the advantages of your ROM as compared to that of your RAM. Okay, is this understood up to here? What is your primary memory, RAM, and what is your permanent memory called as ROM?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now next type of memory is a high speed memory. So now you may know that we call high speed memory also as a cache memory. So this is the other part of a memory or other type of memory which is there inside your computer system. So it is not like that if you have RAM, you cannot have ROM and cache. You require RAM also in the system, you require ROM also in the system, and you require a high speed cache memory also inside the system. So what is this high speed memory? The main objective of a computer is to execute the instructions at a very high speed. Now, whenever I give an instruction, how do you judge whether this computer is good or not? You may judge the computer depending upon the speed. Now, depending upon speed of what? Depending upon the speed of your processor. So if your processor is of a good speed, your computer is going to give you a good performance. But if your processor is of very old or very less speed, it is going to give you very minimum performance. So if you see, if the processor speed generally is greater than 3 or 3.2 gigahertz, okay, whereas you may have a processor which are of 2.4 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz, 1.5 gigahertz. So when you compare this 3 gigahertz of processor and 2 or 2.5 gigahertz ka processor, you'll always find the difference. What is that difference in? The difference in the execution. You give a same program with same size to both of the system, the time taken by both of the system will be different. Your 3 gigahertz processor will always give you output much faster or in much less time as compared to that of your 2.5 or 2 gigahertz. Why? Because the speed in which your processor is operating is less. So how I decide the speed is, The speed is decided depending upon the processor. Okay, so what is the main objective? That whenever a user gives a input to a processor or to a system, what does a user expect? That it should give the output in a minimum amount of time. So if I have given an input today at 11 o'clock, if it gives me output tomorrow at 11 o'clock, is it going to be a good computer? No. By that time, even I can operate, and I at myself can take the output, whether giving it to the computer system. So how do you decide it? It depends upon the speed. So we want the speed should be very high. And speed of what? The speed of the processor. So when I talk about speed of the processor, I'm talking about the cache memory and the speed of the cache memory inside the processor. The main objective of the memory system is to provide fast and uninterrupted access by the processor to the memory. Now what is happening? Up till now, you might have remember, or you might have understood, that whenever you want to execute anything in the computer system, that execution has to go to the processor. Because who is going to execute? The ALU part inside the processor. It won't be executed by the RAM or by any of the input slot or output slot. Every execution and the brain work is done by the ALU. But when it is done by the processor or by the ALU, it has to be loaded inside the main memory. Any program which is stored anywhere, but if it wants to be executed, it has to be brought in the main memory. Okay, so if my program is in the secondary memory called as hard disk, and if I want to execute that program, it is first brought inside the RAM, and from RAM it is executed. If I have inserted a pen drive, and if I want to execute from pen drive, I have to bring that data from the pen drive to your main memory. So anything that has to be executed in the computer system by processor has to be first loaded inside the main memory. So the process of reading by the processor to the main memory and from the main memory to the processor should also be at a very high speed. So when I'm telling that execution should be at a high speed, and that speed depends upon the processor speed, so it is not only execution of a instructions or execution of a program. I also have to check the speed, how much time it is taking to load the program from processor to main memory and from main memory to the processor. So high speed memories are generally costly. That is, your cache memory is generally costly as compared to your RAM and ROM. Okay, the high speed memory is used to increase the speed of the system, but it also increases the cost. So if I try to increase the speed of a system, I'm also going to increase the cost also. So therefore, we generally do not try to purchase a new cache memory. How much ever inbuilt I have got, we start using, or we keep on using that memory only. And in substitute, we make use of the main memory and the permanent memory, which is ROM. Okay, so your cache memory is one of the high speed memory and the costliest memory in your computer system. Okay, and where is this? The high speed memory is between your main memory and the processor. Though it is said it is a part of a processor, but where it is working, it is actually working between the main memory and the processor. Then you have a second high speed memory called as interleaved memory. What is this interleaved memory? The main work of your interleaved memory is to access more words in a single cycle time. What is single cycle time or single access time? Time taken from the input submitted till the output received. So from the input till the output, how much ever data, how much ever more data that a memory can access is considered to be as interleaved memory. Okay, so if I am accessing one word, two words, three words, something like that, then means it is interleaved memory. Whereas your normal cache memory will always access bits and bytes, but your accessing of the words is done by your interleaved memory. Word means it is 16 bits at a time, whereas cache memory is only taking 8 bits at a time. Okay, so your interleaved memory is much more faster as compared to your cache memory. Now, where is your cache memory? It sits between the processor CPU and in between the main memory. So whatever data is passing from CPU to main memory and from main memory to CPU is being taken at a very high speed by using what? By using your cache memory. Okay. So your cache memory is very fast memory. It is small in size. It sits between CPU and the main memory. The functioning of this memory is hidden from the user and the system program. So you will never come to know how this CPU is going to work, how this cache is going to work. Whatever exchange of the data is happening between the CPU and main memory, it is being assume that it is happening, it has been assumed by the user that it is happening between CPU and main memory directly. But what is happening inside the system is that it is happening via this cache memory. Okay. It offers a very high throughput. Very high throughput means once the data is submitted or once the input is submitted, immediately at a within a minimum amount of time, your output will be displayed to the user. That is what is called as throughput. So the time taken to submit the input and the time taken by the system to generate the output is considered to be as a throughput. So these are the characteristics of your cache memory. Again, if it is interleaved memory, it is fast memory. It is smaller in size. It is not between CPU and the main memory. It works between the access. It is majorly used for accessing the contents from the CPU and the main memory. Again, the functioning or the working of interleaved memory is hidden from the user. You will never come to know whether cache memory is working or interleaved memory is working. That is looked after by the system itself. And it also offers a high throughput. So the characteristics of your cache memory and interleaved memory are same. Now next is memory hierarchy and locality of reference. So we have already seen memory hierarchy. We have register, we have cache, we have your primary memory, which is RAM, and then we have the secondary memories like magnetic tape, disk, hard disk, pen drive, CDs, DVDs, and so on. So as we move upward from magnetic disk to register, that means as we start from bottom, which is secondary to primary, primary to higher speed memory, what is going to increase is your cost is going to increase, your speed will be increased, your size will be decreased. These three things keep on happening when we move from bottom to top. So if you remember yesterday's memory hierarchy diagram, we have secondary memory below, we have primary memory, and then we have the cache memory and the registers, which are high speed memory. So if we see, if we keep on moving from down to top, every memory, that means the speed of secondary is less as speed of primary memory. Speed of primary memory is less as compared to speed of your cache memory. So cache memory has a highest speed because it is next to the processor. Uske immediate next कौन है? Primary memory RAM. So the speed is of RAM is better as compared to secondary memory. A secondary memory किधर है? It is little more far away from your processor. So once your distance from the processor increases, your speed goes on decreasing. Okay. Next is cost also increases. Buying a cache memory will be more costly as compared to buying a hard disk. Again, buying a RAM will be more costly as compared to buying a hard disk. Okay. So as you move ahead, the cost goes on increasing. Your size decreases because in the processor, we cannot store 1 TB of data. Why? Because processor, if I load it with 1 TB of data, again, it will become slow. So the processor or the cache memory ka size is less, it is in KB. Then your size of a RAM is little less into MB or GB. And your size of your hard disk is much more into GB or TB. Okay. Now, how does your cache memory work? We know that your cache memory is between the CPU and the main memory. So you have CPU, you have cache memory, you have main memory, and then you have secondary memory. Okay. Now, if you remember one thing I had just told you, that if a processor wants to execute anything, that thing has to be brought inside the main memory. If it is not there in the main memory, it will not execute. It will not go and search inside the secondary memory and execute from there. No, it has to be brought in the main memory. If it is there in the main memory, it will execute. If it is not in the main memory, it will never execute. So what is happening? You have CPU, you have cache, you have main memory, and you have secondary memory. When I give a program for execution, say as addition of two numbers, if that addition of two numbers, I have stored it in the secondary memory. Now, will CPU execute that program if it is in the secondary memory? No. What CPU will do, it will first go and search inside the cache. If it gets in the cache memory, it will directly search from the cache memory. If it does not get in the cache, it will go and search in the main memory. If it is still not there in the main memory, it will not execute. What it will do is, it will ask the main memory to load it from the secondary memory. So what will main memory do? Load that addition wala program from the secondary memory to the main memory. Again, what will CPU do? It will try and search in the cache memory. Did it find that addition program in the cache memory? No. It will go and search in the main memory. Did it find in the main memory? Yes, it is now there in the main memory because main memory has loaded from secondary into its own self. So now since the CPU has found the program in the main memory, it will directly execute from the main memory and store the result in the cache for temporary purpose unless and until it is displayed to the user on the screen. Once it is displayed on the user from the on the screen, it will remove it from the cache memory. So this is how your cache memory and your CPU works. First, the data is searched in cache. If it is found in the cache, it will execute from the cache itself. But if it is not found in the cache, immediate next it will search in the main. If it is there in the main, execute it from the main. But if it is not in the main, it will not execute. It will tell the main memory to load it in itself first, and after it is loaded, it will re-execute the program again. Okay, is this understood up till here? Yes or no? Yes.
Ma'am, I have one question. What's the exact difference between cores and gigahertz of processor?
Sorry?
What's the exact difference between cores and gigahertz of the processor?
Core, na? You're talking about core, right? C-O-E-R, C-O-R-E.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Now, what are cores and your gigahertz? Gigahertz is your measurement of your speed. Whereas what is core? Core is a measurement of your cycles. Now we have both the things are separate. When I say core means what? I am judging the speed, or I am identifying how the performance of the processor is depending upon the clock cycle. Whereas when I say gigahertz, I am judging the performance of the processor based on the speed. So when I talk about core, I am measuring the cycles, but when I talk about gigahertz, I am measuring it into the speeds. Both are two different units. One uses a concept of cycle, one uses a concept of the timing. That is what is the difference in core and gigahertz. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Rest, everything is understood up till here. What is RAM memory, what is ROM memory, and which are the high speed memory. So we have learned one new interleaved memory as a high speed memory. How that is going to operate, that we will see in the next slide. So along with the cache memory, you have one more high speed memory, which is interleaved memory. Okay. Now let us see what you mean by locality of reference. So as you go ahead to your memory hierarchy, your speed increases, your cost decreases, and your size also decreases. Okay. What is locality of reference? A memory hierarchy was developed based on the program behavior known as locality of reference. ये जो memory hierarchy है that we just discussed, secondary, primary, and high-speed memory, how are they designed? They are designed depending upon this locality of reference. So we have three types of properties for locality of reference. First is temporal locality, second is spatial locality, and third is sequential locality. So what do you mean by temporary or temporal locality? Recently referenced instructions are likely to be referenced again. This is caused by loops which needs to be referenced again and again. Temporal locality means what? It is a place where whichever instructions, if a computer or if a system feels that I will be requiring this instruction again and again, I will store that inside a temporary or inside a temporal locality. Only those instructions which a computer assumes that they may be required in a near future. Okay. What is spatial locality? Access the item whose address is near to each other. So what is happening? I have addresses starting at location 000H. Immediate next instruction is 0001. Next instruction is 0002. Next address is 0003. Next is 0004 and so on. So how am I going to access the data if it is spatial locality? I will access depending upon the nearby location. So 000 के बाद nearby कौन है? Either it is 1 or 2. So I will either access 1 or I will access 2. Okay. If I start with 1, which is a near one, 2 and 3. So after 1, I will access either 2 or 3. If I want to access from the location 10, which is nearby to me, either number 11 or number 12. So this is how I access based on the nearby by judging the location or by seeing the location which is nearby to each other. Third is sequential locality. What is the sequential locality? I do not see anything which is nearer or which I'm going to use in future, nothing like that. I will blindly start from 000 and continue till the end of the memory location. So whenever this memory hierarchy is designed, what I see how I'm supposed to access, either use temporal method or you use spatial method or you use sequential method. If you're using sequential, blindly start from execution from the starting. If you use spatial, select any one memory location of the instruction and search the nearby ones. Whichever are nearby to it, keep on executing them. Or you select the temporal one. What is temporal one? One instruction is executed, computer will already will understand that if it is going to require this instruction again, if it will require this instruction again, I do not have to load it every time in the main memory. I have already there it in the main memory, and I'll directly start the execution from the main memory. That means by using this temporal, what am I avoiding? I'm avoiding unnecessary loading from secondary to main memory. I have brought everything inside the main memory only, and whatever I will require ahead, I will directly start using it from the main memory. I will not every time go to the secondary memory, load it from the secondary to main and then execute. Okay, is that understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now next let us see how does your cache operates. So you have already studied this, I have already explained you. We'll just read the flowchart once. We start execution of a program, we get an address, that means we get a memory location. The memory location is given to the CPU, that from which memory location you have to start the execution. Now what will I check is the block inside the cache. If the block is there inside the cache, I will directly fetch all the related data, execute it, and I will complete the execution. But if it is not inside the cache, what am I going to do is I will access it from the main memory. That means I will try to search it from the main memory. Allocate a cache line for the main memory block. Allocate the cache line for the main memory block means I have loaded the contents into the main memory. I have searched into the main memory. I have got it into the main memory. Now, since the data is there in the main memory, my cache and main memory both will operate together for executing that particular program. Load the main memory block into the cache line. That means once if it is there in the main memory, I will use the cache memory as well as main memory for the execution to complete the execution in the faster manner. Once it is completed, or the working of the cache and the main memory is completed, my instruction is executed and I have completed the execution of a program. Okay, so this means what? This side is for checking into the cache memory. If it is there, directly execute stop. If it is not, go and search in the main memory. It will, if it is there in the main memory, work with the cache memory along with the main memory and complete the execution of the program. Okay.
What is RA?
Hello, Nishid, I could not hear you.
Ma'am, what is RA?
RA is deliver the required word from the registered. Choose the particular data or choose a particular word of data from the required register, give it to the CPU and then complete the instruction. RA means I am using a register. That register has my word. Word means it has my data of 16 bits or 8 bits. And then I'm using, or I'm storing it into the CPU or giving it to the CPU for the execution. Once the CPU has completed the execution by using that register, it will complete the instruction and display executed that instruction completely. What you have a processor, you have a cache in between, you have system bus, and then on this side you have your main memory. So every operation from the processor goes to your cache, cache goes to your main memory with the help of the system bus. Okay, in between you have address buffer, which will look after or which will keep on storing your memory locations for temporary purpose. And then the addresses will be carried by these address line. Data will be carried by this data line. The data will be stored temporarily in your data buffer. Once it is delivered to the main memory or delivered to the processor, it will be removed from this data buffer. And all the control mechanism will be done by these control lines. Okay. So processor, cache, main memory, communication from the main memory to this part of the system will be done by the system bus. All the addresses will be carried by these address bus. Data will be carried by the data bus. Address and the data will be stored temporarily into respective buffers, and all the controlling will be done by these control lines. Okay, this is how your cache organization or your cache memory works. Clear? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So with this, we have completed up till here about RAM, about ROM, about your high-speed memory, only cache. We have not studied interleaved. Okay. Now we have something called as address mapping inside the computer system. What is that address mapping? It is a method used for translating the main memory address to the cache address. What is there between the main memory and the processor? It is the cache. Main memory has its own address. Now that address is being carried over here. It is given to cache memory also, and it is given to the processor also. But that cache does not understand this main memory address as it is. It has to be converted into its own understanding address. What is that own understanding address called? A cache address. And who does that conversion? It is done by any one of these address mapping methods. Which are they? Either direct addressing will be used to convert memory address into cache address, or fully associative method will be used for converting main memory address into cache address, or a set associative method will be used for converting a main memory address to cache address. Now, before we study all these three addressing terms, we first have to understand what do we mean by block, what do you mean by line, and what do you mean by set. Now, what do you mean by block? It is a fixed size of a packet which contains the information that is moved between a cache memory and a main memory. That means when I'm moving a data between this cache memory and the main memory, how am I moving this data? This data is moved in the form of a block. Okay. And what does that block contains? It contains a data with a memory address. Okay. So बहुत सारे data को एक block में डाल दिया है, and that block is now moving between cache and the main memory. Next we have is line. What is line? Container in a cache that stores a block as well as other information such as valid bit and tag bit. So block क्या कर रहा है? जो data है main memory और cache के बीच में it is moving. But once that block has reached to the cache memory, I call it as a line. In between cache and main memory, I have block. But once that block reaches the cache memory, I call it as line. What does that line have? Line will have all the information about the data in the form of a block which is received over here. Along with that, a line also has some information called as valid bit and tag bit. Okay, what is this valid bit? Either 1 or 0, which indicates 0, absence of data. 1 indicates presence of data. What is tag bit? That we will study in the next slide. But just remember that line is what? When the data has reached the cache, it is called as line. That line is having a valid bit, it is having a block of a data, and it is having a tag bit. What is that valid bit? Which indicates 0 as an absence of data, 1 as a presence of data. What is that block? Nothing but the data which has come from the main memory to the cache memory for the execution. What is the tag bit? That we will see in the next slide. Okay. Next is set. Collection of one and more lines. So if these lines, if I collect it, I call it as a set. So if more than one lines I have, I call it as a set. Set in direct map cache consists of single line, whereas in fully associative and set associative, it consists of multiple lines. Okay. If the set is of direct method, it is only one line. But if that set is of fully associative and set associative, it will have multiple lines. Okay. Now let us see what is direct mapping. What is tag? We will see in this slide. First, we will understand what is a direct method. Now see, what is happening? We have a main memory over here. Can you see that? B0, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We have the main memory, which is divided into blocks. What are those blocks? B0, B1, B2, B3. These are the blocks. Okay. This blocks has a memory location 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, and so on. Okay. These blocks are divided into groups called as group 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. 4 into 1 group, remaining 4 into next group, remaining 4 into next group, remaining 4 into next group. All these blocks are belonging to some of the other sets. Okay. Can you see that S1, S2, S3 written on the right hand side of the diagram? If you cannot see, open page number 431 of your book. Those who can see will see. Those who cannot see can open page number 431. Now, these sets are numbered as S0, S1, S2 and S3. This is your main memory. This is your cache memory. And here you will have your processor for the execution. Now what is going to go from from main memory to cache memory is a block of the data. Once it goes into the cache memory, it will be either set or it will be either lines. So now we have set as set 0, set 1, set 2 and set 3. Now can you see this extra line over here? These extra lines are nothing but the tag bits. Now what are those tag bits that we will see? Before that, let us understand how this mapping and how this conversion is done. Can you see bit number B0 is pointing to set 0. B1 is pointing to set 1. B2 is pointing to set 2. B3 is pointing to set number 3. Again, B4 is pointing to set 0. B5 to set 1. B6 to set 2. B7 to set 3. Again, B8 to 0, 9 to 1, 10 to 2, 11 to 3. Again 12 to 0, 13 to 1, 14 to 2 and 15 to 3. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now how is this mapping done? It is done based on this formula. What is the formula? I want to know the cache number. To know the cache number, what you have to know is block number of the main memory, mod it with the total number of slots in the cache. What am I doing, or why am I doing this? In order to get the cache address. So to get the cache address in direct mapping, what formula you use is cache address is equal to block number of main memory, mod it with the total number of slots in the cache memory. Now let us assume that I want to find out that block number 11. This block 11 points to which particular set, or will get converted or will go into which particular set. So to do that, I do not know what is the cache address, but I know the block number of the main memory. Which is the block number of the main memory? 11 is the block number. How many total number of slots I have? I have slot 4, group 0, group 1, group 2 and group 3. I have 4 slots. So what do I do is I divide, that is 11 mod 4. When I do 11 mod 4, what do I get? 4 2s are 8. Yes or no? Divide
Yes.
4 by 11. What is the quotient? Quotient is 2.
3.
Quotient.
2.
Quotient is 2 and remainder is 3. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So now when you see this, my block number was 11. My quotient was 2. How do I represent 2 in binary? 1 0. Yes or no?
Yes.
My remainder is 3. How do I represent 3 in binary? 1 1. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
So your first 2 bits, which is your quotient, is nothing but the tag value. So 1 0 is what? 2. So your 11 is going to belong to which particular group? It will be belonging to group number 10. Can you see the address 10?
Yes, ma'am.
Which will be the remainder? Remainder is nothing but the set number of the cache. What is the set number of the cache? 1 1. That means which set? Set number 3. So group number 2 and set number 3. In short, your remainder is nothing but the set number and your quotient is nothing but the group number, which will be nothing but your tag bits. Did you understand this?
Yes, ma'am.
Let us take one more number, say suppose B7. Okay, I want to find out that 7 belongs to which particular cache slot. Okay, so what is the block number in the main memory? Block number is 7. I have to mod that 7 with the total number of slots in the cache. How many slots I have? I have 4 slots. So divide 7 by 4. How much do you get? What is the quotient? Quotient is 1. What is the remainder? 3.
3.
Yes or no? So remainder means what? Remainder is the value of your set. So your B7 will belong to which particular set? If you check, your B7 is belonging to set number 3. Is that correct? Yes or
Yes,
no?
ma'am.
Yes. Yes,
What is
ma'am.
the quotient? Quotient is 1. How do you represent 1 in binary? 0, 1. So can you see 0, 1 in front of your B7 number?
Yes.
Is it belonging to the group 1 which I have numbered?
Yes. 0.
Yes. Understood?
Yes.
Understood how it is working?
Yes.
So to find any particular cache address, what do I have to know is I just want to know what is the block number and what is the total number of set. If I get both of them, I can easily identify whether it belongs to which particular cache slot or not. Is this understood?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so your last two,
Remember how,
sorry,
remember how the tag will store the whole address.
how will the value,
What will the tag store?
what will be the, I cannot hear you.
Tag bits.
Tag bit will store 1 0 in case of 11. It will store 0 1 in case of 7. The first two bit is nothing but the tag. That means what had happened? What has happened? Your 7, which is having the value 0111 of your main memory address, is now converted into your cache address as tag bit as 01 and slot bit or a set bit as 11. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
ओके तो ये मेमोरी एड्रेस और ये एड्रेस सेम है बट इधर it is called as main memory address, but now I have converted that into a cache memory address, which is divided into two things, first as tag bit and the second as the cache memory set bit. Understood? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So is direct mapping understood to you?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the girls? Is it understood? So what are the advantages of using this method? It is very simple to implement and it requires a normal SRAM. Why it is simple? Because once if I know what is the slot and what is the block which I want, I can easily convert with this formula into a cache slot. So can you see what is happening in over here? If I want to go to access this B7, what I have to do is I have to first calculate and then identify in which set it is. So what is the disadvantage? It has a poor hit ratio. Hit ratio means what? Many a times, if I do not take these group numbers or these slot numbers properly, I may end up with going inside a wrong set. Suppose by mistake, instead of taking the slot number as 4, if I take it as 3, I'll get some cache set number which is different. So I will go and start searching in that set number. Will I get that block in that set number? No. So that is what is called as poor hit ratio. And if two words are accessed at the same time, if I try to access two things at the same time, that is two block memories at the same time, say suppose B1 and B2 at the same time, if they are belonging to a same group number, what is going to happen? The delay will be more in retrieving the data as well as in execution of a data. Why? Because they both are belonging to a same group type or they are belonging to a same slot number. So if they belong to a same slot number and if the access is done of a same slot number, it is going to take more time. So that is only the disadvantage of your direct mapping. But implementation is faster because if you know these two values properly, you can immediately search for the data and execute the data. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tomorrow we'll see what is fully associative. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Give me your. Is this understood? Whatever is completed today.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.